CJW is the National Council of Jewish Women, and we are joined today with Alpha Epsilon Phi sorority for Vote Safe Digital Lobby Day. We are thrilled to kick off the day with all of you. I want to note for folks who continue to join us, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Be sure that you add your name, your pronouns, your organizational affiliation if appropriate, your city, your state, and send it to all panelists and attendees so we can see who's here with us. So today is really an exciting day. If you are on the East Coast, it is 12 to 5 Eastern time. We have a full day for the next hour. We are gonna welcome some special guests. You are going to hear a little bit more about what the day holds, as well as some tips and tricks to have a successful day and to engage in some successful lobbying. Whether you are a seasoned lobbyist or you are new to it, today is for you. We've got a toolkit filled with all kinds of ways to take action. We've also got a series of visits set up with House and Senate offices. Whether or not you've got meetings, you can tweet, you can post on Instagram, Facebook, call offices. We have all the tools that you need in our toolkit for you to engage. I want to mention before we get started with our speakers that today would not be possible without the incredible staff at National Council of Jewish Women, and as well as Bonnie Wunsch and AE5. We're going to hear from Bonnie Wunsch. You're going to hear more from Sheila Katz at National Council of Jewish Women. But before we get into it, I want to announce our first speaker. We are so thrilled to be joined by Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon. He began his work in public service, founding the Oregon chapter of the Gray Panthers. It's an advocacy group for the elderly. He joined the US Senate in 1996, and that was after becoming the first senator elected in an all vote by mail election. Senator Wyden, we are so thrilled to have you with us today. You are an endless champion for fair and safe voting, and I'd love to turn the Zoom over to you.
Thank you so much. That was unquestionably an inflationary introduction, one bit of information in the interest of full disclosure. At one time, I was the minion maker in the United States Senate. We no longer have a minion, but at one time that was the case. And I'm so thrilled that you all are interested in talking about a piece of legislation and an effort that I think goes right to the core of the values that we share and our priorities as Americans. I, in fact, was the first senator elected by mail. I also introduced the first bill in the United States Congress to give everybody in America the chance to do it the Oregon way. In fact, we just had another all-mail election, our primary that just wrapped up yesterday. And I introduced that bill a number of years ago, and for quite some time it was something of an academic debate. Professors on various campuses would debate back and forth. I called it ideal fodder for the tweed jacket set because they were so interested in who would benefit and how it would work and that kind of thing. It is no longer an academic debate. It is a basic public health and safety question. Americans all recoiled in horror after that our position is winning. Senator Klobuchar and I have introduced federal legislation to essentially give this opportunity to all Americans. And we are starting to see Republicans at the state and local level, like Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland, Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio, Secretary of State Kim Wyman in Washington State. All of them are making the point that the safety and security of voters at the local level have been paramount to protecting Mitch McConnell's turf in Washington, D.C. Mitch McConnell has been the single-handed objector who always seems to find some argument for giving people expanded opportunities to vote. At one point I said, I have not seen any piece of legislation that expands the franchise that Mitch McConnell has ever backed. So this is not something we have seen for the first time. And to give an idea of sort of the latest, recently in Bright Red, Kansas, they had their primary by mail. The lieutenant governor of Bright Red, Utah, which votes by mail, pushed back against Republican talking points about vote by mail. And he said point blank that voting by mail works for his state, and that the chaos and risk of the Wisconsin example was a mistake. Let me just quote this official from Bright Red, Utah, the lieutenant governor. He said, I thought it was just a travesty and a huge mistake and something we don't want to see happen here. That's how he described a vote by mail. So the question is not whether voters want it, it's whether Congress is going to step up and pass the legislation to provide the funding and the reforms to make it possible. I also want to just mention the one argument that opponents make so that you have a little bit of a sense of how they are trying to position their opposition. They want to say that, oh my goodness, vote by mail is tainted by fraud and people who are engaged in all kinds of criminal activity with respect to voting by mail. At one point, Donald Trump said that if there's voting by mail, you'll see people, thousands of them, accumulate in living rooms and dining rooms and the like all across America and sign up to be part of these kind of group efforts to vote by mail. So I actually put up on Twitter, it's my pinned tweet, so you'll see it at the top of the page. It is actually an example of how you vote by mail. And I happen to be sitting in the dining room of my house in Southeast Portland, and I point out to Donald Trump that I'm looking around and I do not see thousands of people in my dining room, as he somehow has tried to convince Americans they should be wary of. What we have done in Oregon, and you'll see this in this video posted on Twitter, is we have, for example, sent the strongest possible message with respect to consequences for people who tamper with ballots. A couple of years ago, we had a poll worker who tampered with 2 ballots. We put that person in jail for 90 days. They were fined more than $13,000 and barred from ever working in an election again. So we have sent the message how strongly we feel about protecting the franchise. And I'm so glad that the National Council of Jewish Women, that all of you are wearing out your digital shoe leather in support of safe voting options. Change doesn't start in Washington, D.C. and trickle down. It starts at the grassroots and goes up. And I look forward to any questions you may all have for a couple of minutes, and working closely with you as we have in the past.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being such a champion for this issue and for leading the way in Oregon. I think we're going to head on to our next speaker. So if there are any parting words you want to share with us to get us revved up, excited, mobilized for the day, we'd love to hear them.
The only thing I would add is your program could not be more timely. We passed a strong bill with the leadership of Speaker Pelosi in the House just a few days ago. It will go to the Senate. We'll probably work to draft the legislation. Some of it is starting now, but certainly after the Memorial Day break. And my hope is that the fact that you all are weighing in with key senators and key elected officials right now can really make a big difference. The decisions with respect to whether we're going to significantly expand vote by mail in the fall are going to be made in the next couple of weeks. So I really appreciate all the effort that the council is putting into this, and your efforts right now could not be more timely. Change is essentially grassroots up and not trickle down. And that is what the council has always stood for. So thank you for being here at just the right time as we work to build more bipartisan support for these efforts.
Thank you so much. You all heard it here first. The timing is not only perfect, but the opportunity is with all of you. Change starts at the grassroots. Thank you so much for that reminder and, you know, such true words. So I'm going to take it from here and share a bit of house. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to share some housekeeping as folks continue to join us, as well as our partners in today's effort. And just a reminder to everyone that the Vote Safe Digital Lobby Day is a 501c3 endeavor. So I want to make sure that folks are aware of that. We are talking about the issues today and the issue at hand about fair and safe elections. You'll notice that everyone's mics are muted and the cameras are turned off. And this is intentional so that we can keep the focus on our speakers today. Please write in the chat if you have questions and if you have any technical issues. Though we have a lot of staff on the call, I do aware that everyone is involved in running the call, so we'll answer your questions as quickly as we can and of course get to any technical issues first. This webinar features closed captioning. I know many of you are joining us by phone and you didn't see that in the chat. I want to make sure that you know that. If you didn't see it in the chat and you're just joining us, all you need to do is click on the CC or the closed caption button. It's at the bottom of your screen and that will turn this feature on. This opening program, if you haven't noticed, is being recorded and it will be shared with all registrants at the end of the day. And this program is also live on Facebook right now. So I want to give a just tremendous thank you to our co-sponsors for the day. I'm going to read them, and from home, I hope that you will clap you know, on Twitter and in other social media platforms, please share the love with these partners joining us today. So in addition to National Council of Jewish Women and A-Phi Sorority, we've got the Alliance of Baptists, Amenu, Anti-Defamation League, Asian and Pacific Islander America Vote, Avodah, Carolina Jews for Justice, Carolina Jews for Justice West, Clean Elections Texas, Common Cause, Declaration for American Democracy, DemCast USA, Fix Democracy First, Jewish Alliance for Law and Social Action, Jewish Council for Public Affairs, Keshet, Leadership Conference of Women Religious, the Lesbian, Gay, and Transgender Center, NYC, Let America Vote /N Citizens United Action Fund, Marlene Meyerson, JCC Manhattan, Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, New Mexicans for Money Out of Politics, Polygon Education Fund, Rabbinical Assembly, Reconstructing Judaism, Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, Truah, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, Union for Reform Judaism, Voter Participation Center, and the Worker Circle. We thank you all for your support and your participation today. Now, I am so honored to welcome our next two speakers. I'm going to introduce them in the order in which they will speak and share a quick bio so you know who they are. First up is Sheila Katz. For those of you who don't know her, she is NCJW, still new CEO, and she leads this network of 90,000 advocates and supporters across the United States. Sheila most recently served as Hillel's International Vice President for Student Engagement and Leadership. During her 12 years there, she engaged Jewish students and professionals around the world through many really cross-cutting and inventive programs, including Ask Big Questions, which is a national initiative that she both co-founded and directed, guiding students through conversations to help them understand themselves and others, as well as Meets Vote, a tremendous campaign that's nonpartisan, civic engagement, and registered 19,000 students leading up to the 2018 midterm elections. Following Sheila, We have the pleasure of hearing from Bonnie Wunsch, the Executive Director of Alpha Epsilon Phi Sorority, and she also served as Development Director, and she has been there for 30 years. Her service to the fraternal movement has been incredibly extensive, serving on the boards and as president of Fraternity Executives Association and the Executive Directors Association. She's also served on the board of the Northeast Greek Leadership Association and then one of its predecessor organizations for 19 years. We're also honored that Bonnie is a life member of the National Council of Jewish Women and served as a section president. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with NCJW, we are a 125-year-old progressive social justice organization, and we work for women, children, and families to improve their lives and to ensure their individual and civil rights. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sheila Katz.
Great. Thanks so much, Jody. Hi, everyone. I am in Washington, D.C. right now, and fun enough for our conversation today, received my absentee ballot just today in the mail. So I'm looking forward to filling it out and then putting this I voted sticker on afterwards and advocating for everyone else to be able to access safe voting. I really just want to thank you all for joining us today. We have over 750 people from across the country who signed up to join us throughout the day, which is truly phenomenal. Even in a time of social isolation, we're finding ways to connect and make a difference. And I'd expect nothing less than from the National Council of Jewish Women Advocates who are joining us. And I'm so thrilled that we're partnering today with AEFI, an organization that has a long history of building a strong sense of community for women and developing young leaders. I know you're here today because you're committed to ensuring every American voter has access to safe and fair elections in the lead up to more state primaries and as we prepare for Election Day in November. Our vote is our voice, and our democracy is at its strongest when every voice is heard. Never has it been more vital than in this moment, and never have we faced a crisis quite like this one. National Council of Jewish Women Advocates are no stranger to fighting to secure voting rights. This year, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Our founder, Hannah G. Solomon, fought for that amendment, which gave most women, white and wealthy women most prominently, access to the ballot box. We know that the reality isn't always in line with the law, and to this day, we are still fighting to ensure that every eligible voter is able to participate in the democratic process. COVID-19 did not create voter suppression, but much like the other issues of inequality and injustice, the pandemic has exacerbated the barriers to free and safe elections for all Americans. No one should have to choose between putting their life at risk and casting their vote. You have taken an important step by joining us today to urge Congress to provide funding for safe elections across our country and ensure everyone is able to cast their ballot without fear. Even now, in the midst of a national and global emergency, some lawmakers want to further restrict access to voting instead of doing all we can to increase voter turnout. These restrictions and regulations disproportionately impact communities of color, non-English speakers, low-income people, the elderly, women, and LGBTQ folks. But momentum for change is building, and there is nationwide movement to expand access to the ballot, led by women, young people, and people of color, and led by everyone on this call who's going to make a difference today. And so this includes, as we make a difference today, asking lawmakers to provide the funding needed to implement new election policies nationwide as soon as possible. So what does that look like? There are really 4 things we're asking for. 1 is expanding voter registration so that people in every state have access to online registration, same day, election day registration, and allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register. 2, expanding absentee voting by mail to include any eligible voter, not just those who meet requirements that vary from state to state. 3, ensuring safe in-person voting is accessible for all who need it, including by expanding early voting opportunities. And 4, expanding voter education to make sure every eligible voter knows how to vote, where to vote, and why they should vote. In 2020, every issue we care about is at stake. And without access to the ballot, we can't elect lawmakers who represent our communities and our needs. Ensuring and expanding access to safe, legal abortions, supporting undocumented immigrants, increasing protections for LGBTQ+ folks, enacting sensible gun safety laws. All of these and more, the issues that matter most to you, are beyond our reach if we do not protect the right to vote. Hillel the Elder taught, Al tifrod min hatzibor. Do not separate yourself from the community. And while we may all be physically separated right now, we are united in our fight for justice and our commitment to lifting up the voices of all those who are at risk of losing their access to safe and fair elections. Jewish tradition teaches that we have an obligation to secure access to healthcare, welcome immigrants, care for those in poverty, ensure fair wages, and much more. We can and we will impact the way the United States lives out these principles by voting. Thank you again for being here today, and I'm so thrilled to turn it over to Bonnie, who runs AEFI, and we're so excited to be doing this with you. AEFI and NCJW have long been partners together, and we're thrilled to be with you today. Go for it, Bonnie.
Thank you, Sheila, and you're a tough act to follow, but I am pleased to be here with you today and to tell everyone a little bit about Alpha Epsilon Phi. AEFI is the nation's oldest Jewish sorority, and we are so pleased to be partnering with NCJW and the many co-sponsors in support of today's critical mission. AEFI was founded in 1909 at Barnard College by 7 Jewish women who were unable to join other sororities on campus. Today, we have chapters located from Atlantic to Pacific, as well as in Canada, and we continue to inspire and support exemplary women dedicated to friendship and a lifelong commitment to AEFI while building on the vision of our Jewish founders. A partnership with NCJW was truly Besheret, or meant to be. Our national president proudly wears the sorority badge that was worn by honorary initiate Hannah G. Solomon, founder of NCJW. Additionally, we have many sisters who have held leadership roles in NCJW through the years at both the national and local levels, including several NCJW national presidents, vice presidents, and board members. And as Jody mentioned, I myself am a life member and a past section president. AEFI's founding principles and mission align not only with the core values of NCJW, but with the goals of today's Digital Lobby Day. Just as it was the right of our founders to find a sorority home, it is the right of all citizens to be able to vote in a safe and healthy environment. Whether it's our freedom of association or our democratic right to vote, we must all stand up and be heard. The issues we are discussing today truly transcend party lines, religious affiliation, and any other demographics. AEFI and I know this issue should resonate and does resonate with our sisters, both collegians and alumni. And I urge each and every one of you to reach out not only to your senators and representatives today, but also to use the next few hours to get your friends and family to do the same. We must all have the ability to exercise our right to vote and to do so without worry as we set the stage for what we hope will be a successful 2020 election. AEFIs have fought for our rights and have been a part of many such movements in the past, and we will continue to do so in the future as we continue to empower our sisters and young women on college campuses across the country. We are always looking for strong, committed young women to join our sisterhood. If you know women who will be attending college in the fall and would be interested in joining membership, please send their information to us at join@aefi.org, and you don't have to be an AEFI to let us know who'll be on the campuses in the fall. I wish you lots of good luck today as you make lots of great contacts and as you help to secure our future. Thank you, and thank you for allowing AEFI to be a part of this wonderful effort.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Thank you, Sheila. It's so incredibly powerful to have 2 historic Jewish women's organizations teaming up today to advocate for safe elections. We heard from Sheila, the ask with the 4 parts. It's also in your toolkit. And from Bonnie, the importance of not just reaching out to lawmakers, but to your friends, your families, your networks, You can use today for that, and you can continue every day to reach out to folks and let them know how important it is and that the time is now. As Sheila mentioned, we do have more than 700 people signed up to join us for the day, along with the 29 organizations co-sponsoring and all of their members. As of this morning, we've got, I believe, 12 lobby visits, and we've got representation from 37 states, including the District of Columbia. Alaska, Texas, South Carolina, and Idaho are also in the mix. So for us, it's probably our most, if not one of our most diverse geographically lobby days. And speaking of geography, you also heard Senator Wyden talk about Wisconsin, and we saw how that played out. We know that there are primaries happening. One just happened in Wisconsin. We know there are many more happening this month and next month. And we are lucky to be joined today by a Wisconsin voter, Sammy Steinabner. She's going to share her story of trying to vote in Wisconsin. Sammy, executive director of Tikkun Ha'ir since July 2016. She's also a member of NCJW Milwaukee section and on the board since 2017. I'd love to turn it over to you, Sammy.
Thank you so much, Jody, and to the whole NCJW crew for the invitation to share my story. I'm coming to you from just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I live in a suburb called Fox Point. And my story begins right as the shutdown occurred. My husband and I were both feeling sick within that first week. My husband began showing a fever and some signs of some illness right around March 13th, just as things were slowing down, and I started feeling some low-grade symptoms and other sickness on the 18th. And I had requested my ballot actually on my absentee ballot on the 17th, just as a precaution. So our fevers and various symptoms continued for about 10 days. We were started to feel a little better and then felt worse. And at first we were like, oh, it's just a cold, it's no big deal. And the doctor called the COVID matter, but really more about the severity. And because of that, we were told we needed to just stay home. It was not suggested for us to get tested in any way. So we continued to be really strictly quarantined and quarantine ourselves away from my parents. We have 2 small children, and we were really starting to get nervous as Election Day approached, which was April 7th. My husband also requested his absentee ballot, and the day before, we still hadn't received anything. So we were feeling quite anxious. And then we got word that our governor had put an executive order in, Tony Evers, to try and move the election to June. And I felt this great sense of relief. I remember being out on a walk, and I physically felt that relief. And then unfortunately later that day, it was overruled, and we were not able to postpone our election, but rather it needed to go forth as planned. So I think, as Senator Wyden also had mentioned, polling places were kind of a disaster. In my town, we were able to have our usual polling place open. In the city of Milwaukee, there's usually over 100 polling places. They were consolidated to 5, which was really a very intense scene to behold. We had to make the decision. Because we hadn't received our absentee ballots by Election Day, were we going to actually go out there and vote? And my husband is also in the Jewish profession. He's a Jewish educator at a local synagogue. synagogue here, and we felt very a disheartening day. We had never missed a vote before, but we truly felt disenfranchised. And you know what came of it? On election day, as a result, there were over 40 cases of COVID that had developed that were able to be traced back to that experience. We also learned later that day that our village hall was having serious issues with absentee ballots, and the ballots kept being returned to our village hall by the post office. We only learned that, of course, on election day, so there was absolutely nothing we could have done. So not only was this a personal challenge, as Jody mentioned, I'm also the executive director of an organization here in Milwaukee called Tikkun Ha'ir of Milwaukee. Tikkun Ha'ir, for anybody who doesn't know Hebrew, translates to repair the city. And our mission is to build a more just community by uniting Jews of all backgrounds in study, action, and civic engagement. So not only am I an NCJW Milwaukee section board member, but we've also been, through Tikkun Ha'ir, collaborating with NCJW and our local JCRC, as well as a statewide interfaith effort for voter engagement. So I had been getting the word out to everybody to request an absentee ballot and continue to do so, continue to help convene interfaith conversations around Get Out the Vote here in Milwaukee. Our lay leaders helped to put on a webinar. We're promoting a video about sharing why is it important for people to vote, and also what barriers have you faced. And you know, here I was very much in the middle of it, feeling that suppression along this issue really for the first time. So so what I'm feeling today is so much to say that the work doesn't end here. That, you know, on the ground, we've been working in partnership both with the Jewish community and with those who have a longstanding history of being marginalized around voting issues, and working with those community organizers to help promote the vote. What is really inspiring is, yes, we are working certainly with League of Voters, and we even put on a voter registration training in partnership with them and right before the shutdown, about 2 weeks before. But I have to say I'm more motivated than ever to make sure that my voice is heard and that everybody has an opportunity for that. I've called my state representative. I've called out the Supreme Court here in Wisconsin because I truly feel like they failed us. And I know that we have to keep standing up so that everybody has a chance to vote safely. Here in Wisconsin, we're aiming to have the time and the resources so that there's no more barriers to requesting absentee ballots and feeling confident that you will be able to get it and vote safely. So please join me in keeping at it so no one has to really decide between their health and their representation. So back to you, Jody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sammy. Your story just really illustrates so perfectly why Vote Safe Digital Lobby Day is so critical today. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and for all the love in the chat for Sammy and for all of our speakers. I do want to highlight that we are 167 days until the November 3rd election. Up for grabs is 33 Senate seats, all 435 seats of the US House of Representatives. 11 states will have gubernatorial elections, and there is one presidential election. So as Sheila mentioned, this is just an incredibly consequential election. I'm going to give you an overview of the day, and I want you to listen closely. Hopefully you received an email this morning with the toolkit, but I'm going to share a little bit more that you may not have seen or you may not know. So it's going to be a quick high-level overview of the day, and then my colleague Faith Williams is going to take us through the remainder of this call. So following Faith Williams, who is going to talk to us about how to take action, walking through the ask, and lobbying best practices. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, she is the Associate Director of Government Relations and Advocacy at NCJW. From there, between 1 to 4:30 is when we take action. Again, this is going to happen through some pre-planned lobby visits, but it doesn't mean that you can't pick up the phone and call your lawmakers' offices, tweet at them, post on whatever platform is comfortable for you. And then again, as Bonnie said, reach out to your friends and family. Tell them about today. Talk to them about the importance of voting safe in this election. We are going to have from 2 to 3 p.m. a social media blitz. Hashtag vote safe. Please don't forget about that. And then NCJW advocacy staff from 1 to 1:30, and then also from 3 to 4 will be available for office hours. There is a Zoom link for every single one of these. It's in your toolkit. I know in the chat there was some question around the links. They've all been provided, and I want to make sure to call your attention to the fact that they each have a unique link. So you're welcome to join what works for you today and what you're able to do based on your schedule, but that these links are distinct for each and everything that we are offering. The office hours are to share any excitement of the day, any best practices, challenges that you've had, retweets. We're here to help in any way, and also here to share in your excitement of the day. I do want to highlight our closing program starts promptly at 4:30, and we have Valerie Jarrett, formerly with the Obama White House, who will be closing the call for us today. You are not going to want to miss that. So with that, it is time for me to say goodbye to you all and turn it over to Faith Williams.
Thank you so much, Jody. Hi, everybody. As Jody mentioned, my name is Faith Williams. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Associate Director of Government Relations and Advocacy at the National Council of Jewish Women. So I know we're getting up to the time when you're going to kickstart your advocacy afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. So my goal is I'm going to share my screen again in just a moment. I just wanted to go face to face for a second and walk through the asks, how to take action, some lobbying best practices, and to give a quick overview of what's in the toolkit you've received. It's chock full of resources, and I want to make sure you know what's in there. So I'm going to reshare my screen if you give me just a moment. Thank you. Okay. Oh, good. All right. It's always a little nerve-wracking when the PowerPoint works or doesn't work. So the ask, and we've talked about this before, and our amazing speakers have highlighted this on the call. But at the end of the day, here's what we're asking for. We are urging federal lawmakers to appropriate $4 billion in funding to states to implement and/or expand voter registration, including pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds, to implement and/or expand no excuse absentee voting by mail, to expand, hopefully they've already implemented, voter education, and to implement and/or expand safe in-person voting, including early voting. So why this set of asks? So the National Council of Jewish Women, AEFI, and all of our voting rights partners have sort of agreed that these are all pieces of the puzzle that will help make our elections safe in the remaining primary elections this summer through the big one in November and even beyond. So each of these is a crucial part of the puzzle. It's not enough to just do one. And so that's why we're asking for all of it. And again, our voting rights partners in particular, I would say the Leadership Conference and the Brennan Center have helped really craft this ask and came up with this total of $4 billion. It might sound like a lot, but I want to remind you that recent coronavirus-related supplemental bills have been in the trillions. So this is definitely something Congress can, in fact, appropriate. So in the toolkit, this ask is spelled out in a ton of detail. So we take each of these bullet points and we break it down. Why this bullet point? Who does it help? and why alone is it not enough. So I want to share that that's in the toolkit. We also have talking points. How can you talk about voting rights in a way that's inclusive and focuses on expanding the right to vote? And how do you perhaps combat myths of voter fraud in these conversations? So all of that is in the toolkit as well. At the end of the day, I want to make really clear that this is the most important. I call it a messaging point, but it's just true. We do not have to choose between our safety and our democracy. We just don't. Sammy shared her story from Wisconsin. She was forced to choose, or really the choice was made for her. A false choice really isn't a choice at all. So that's why we are making this ask to our lawmakers today. So there are 4 ways to take action that I want to talk through, and all of these again are spelled out in the toolkit. I'll go one at a time and we'll hit them all, I promise. So the first is to attend a virtual lobby visit. And this is just like a regular lobby visit, but even better because you can be in sweatpants when you do it, right? You don't have to trek up to the Hill or to your state capitol. And some of you have set up visits ahead of time that are happening this afternoon. Some of you might take the time this afternoon to set up visits in the future. Both are great. And essentially, it's just like a regular lobby meeting. You're talking with a lawmaker or a relevant staff member. You're sharing who you are, why you care about voting, and what your ask is. And then you're listening to the answer. That's really important. You can use various technology platforms to hold a virtual lobby visit. The toolkit has information about that. Popular ones include Skype or Zoom or freeconferencecall.com, or even just a regular conference call if your phone lets you do that. All of those are great ways to have a virtual lobby visit. The second way to take action will be to call your lawmaker's office. Elected officials on Capitol Hill have to log every call and email they receive. They're keeping track of what their constituents are telling them they need or want, right? And that's a good thing. That's what we want them to do. So calling your lawmaker's office and speaking with whoever is on the other end of that phone, a staff person, probably not the lawmaker themselves, but a staff person, is a great way to get your message across. And in the toolkit, we have not only phone numbers for every member of Congress, their main office, but we also have a sample script that essentially says, here's what you can say when you pick up the phone to call your lawmaker. Outside of the ask, which we just talked about, you can change up the script, make it personal to you. Why do you care about voting? Why do you care about the upcoming election? So that can all go into a conversation, and depending on the office and the time of day and the staff person you reach, it can turn into a conversation and really end up mimicking a full lobby visit. Or it could be briefer and you're just sharing your opinion. Both are fantastic and make an impact. The third way to take action this afternoon is to speak out on social media. So in the toolkit, there are sample Facebook posts, sample tweets, and some sample Instagram posts. But I know that there are way more social media options out there than just those 3 platforms. So you do you. If you want to take action on TikTok or on, I don't even know some of the others, go for it. And again, Jody mentioned this when we talked about the schedule, but there is we're having a specific social media blitz this afternoon. So you are welcome to post on social media any time of day, today, tomorrow, whenever. But if you're not sure when to do it, join us for that blitz. The final way to take action is to send an action alert. And I was reminded recently that action alert is a really inside the Beltway terminology. So I'm going to explain what that means. So an action alert is a way for organizations like NCJW or like AE5 to let their members know that they want them to do something. Maybe they want them to send an email. Maybe they want them to make a phone call. The ask in that action alert can be different. But all I mean by that is to send an NCJW action alert. We've made it really easy. The link is in the toolkit. If you click on the link, you're taken to the NCJW website. You fill in brief demographic information so that it knows who your elected officials are. And then it takes you to an email. You can change the text of the email or keep it as is. And it's essentially similar to the script if you're calling your lawmaker, similar to the ask that we talked about. It's just saying, here's all the things that you want to see. And with the click of really just one button, it will go to both of your senators and your representative. Or if then you're in DC, it will go to your representative. So those are 4 ways we're recommending to take action this afternoon. And again, these are all spelled out in detail in the toolkit that you've received this morning and other times as well, depending on when you signed up. So next, I want to talk about some tips for a successful lobby visit. And I want to preface it by saying that some of your lobby visits today or in the future might be virtual. Some of them might be phone calls. But what we're going to talk about applies to both. These are just best practices. And best of all, when or if ever things go back to normal, you can use these tips when you're in person with your lawmaker or your lawmaker's office. So we break it down kind of into 3 pieces: before, during, and after. So to have a successful lobby visit, here's what you do before it. And again, this applies to a virtual visit. It really even applies to a phone call for the most part, or an in-person meeting. So before the visit, you set up the appointment. You research the legislator's history on the issues or relevant bills. So in this case, what have they said about voting rights or the elections? Have they spoken out for or against some of the reforms we've been talking about? And then the last thing you want to do is practice. And it's sometimes, it might sound a little silly to practice what is a 2-person or a multi-person conversation, but all you're trying to do is make sure you're comfortable with the ask, that you know what you want to say, and if you're sharing a story, that you identify what story you want to share. I would say the only thing in this list that really won't apply for a phone call where you're just picking up the phone this afternoon and calling the office, is setting up the appointment. You don't need to worry about that. During the visit, it's a bit of a longer list, but it's not that daunting. You want to be flexible. And this just goes for any conversation you're having on the Hill, off the Hill, in your life. Go with the flow. If a lawmaker, says they can meet and all of a sudden they can't and it's a staff person, the staff person is a wonderful person to meet with. If you think the visit's going to be at 3 p.m. and they let you know 5 minutes before that it's going to be at 3:30 and it's going to be for 5 minutes and you have to talk really quickly, do your best. Just be flexible. Next, introductions. Don't skip that part. I've actually seen that happen a lot. Again, whether you're on the phone or virtual or even in person, you want to share who you are, what your pronouns are, and what organization you're with. Next, you want to say thanks. And you're going to see that on here again. You either want to thank the lawmaker for something they've done recently in your community or a bill they passed that you support, or if perhaps you feel that you don't have anything to thank your lawmaker for in those categories, you simply thank them for their time today. So next, you want to make the ask. We talked about that earlier. Remember, we're asking for $4 billion in federal funding for states to implement and or expand voter registration, absentee vote by mail, voter education, and in-person voting. So that's the ask. Next up, a personal story or stories. Again, why do you care about this issue? Sammy was brave enough to share her story with us. She has a great kind of personal story to add in whenever she's lobbying. Next up, during the visit, you can offer to be a resource. Lobby visits, and again, conversations and relationships, they go both ways. So not just what can they do for you, but what can you do for them? If they ask questions, note those down, try to get them the information they need. And similarly, ask questions of them, be specific. So today, if you call into an office and you share the ask and they say, well, there's no way we can support this, ask why. What's the holdup? What's the hesitancy? Is there additional information you can provide? So you want to probe a little bit and ask questions. And just as importantly, you want to listen to the answer. Again, this is a conversation. It's a two-way street. So you want to listen for what they're saying, and sometimes you can even figure out what they're not saying. Next, during the visit, you want to wrap up. You kind of take stock of the things you might have promised to share with each other, any questions that you're going to get back to them with, or vice versa. And then you say thank you again, once again, if nothing else, for their time. And then last, after the visit, so this is where it might vary a little bit between a virtual visit and a phone call, but there's some similarities still. So if you're having a virtual visit with other people that are in your NCJW section or in your organization, after the visit, you want to debrief the visit. What went well? What do you need to get back to them with? What could have gone better? And I just it bears saying, whether it's a virtual visit or in person or whatever, do this after the visit when the other person is no longer on the line. Next, you want to send a thank you email. In that email, you can include any resources you said you would share, or it can just simply be a thank you note. And then stay in touch. I've said this probably a half dozen times so far, but this is all about relationship building, and staying in touch is an important part of that. Okay, a few more best practices. So you do want to be flexible. You want to say thank you. You want to practice time management. That's a good way of respecting their time and your own. You want to stay on message, use personal stories, listen as much as you talk, if not more, debrief after a visit, and stay nonpartisan. And I really want to emphasize that one. So Jody mentioned at the beginning that the National Council of Jewish Women and this entire day is 501c3 friendly. And that's a bit of jargon for saying that we can take positions on issues and not candidates. So we are all about sticking to our ask, which is for lawmakers to give funding to states so we can have safe elections. We're not going to talk about the candidates in those elections. We're not going to talk about the current candidates in their own races, perhaps. Stay nonpartisan. I can't stress that enough. So here are some things you don't want to do. And some of these might sound obvious, but I'm going to go through them anyway. Don't make up a response to a question. It's very tempting to want to answer someone's question. And sometimes it can be hard to admit when we don't know something, but it is so much better to admit you don't know something and say you'll follow up than to make up a response. Don't be led off topic. And all that to say, practice kind of good conversational skills. Pivot back to the ask if you feel you need to. Don't argue. This can also be somewhat tempting. It's okay to politely agree to disagree, because at the end of the day, you're having a conversation, you're building a relationship, and you're trying to gather information. And arguing really puts all of that to a stop. I said this before, don't talk about the election. Don't talk about the primary, the upcoming primary. Don't talk about the specific November election. We can talk about it in the sense that we want it to be safe and we want reforms to be implemented, but we're not going to talk about specific candidates. And then last, don't be intimidated. As a constituent, you have every right to be there. Okay, so maybe in this case, by being there, we mean being in your living room while you virtual on Zoom with your lawmaker or staff person, or you have every right to be on the phone when you call the office. So maybe not be there, but you have every right to speak out as a constituent. And again, while these practices, these do's and don'ts might lend themselves perhaps best to an in-person or virtual visit, I think there's lessons here to be gleaned for calling an office as well, that you want to practice time management and you don't want to argue and you want to stay nonpartisan. All of those things are true for both. So I mentioned I wanted to just make sure everyone knew what was in the hashtag VoteSafe toolkit that has been sent out. It is chock-a-block full of resources. So we have the schedule of events in there with all of the individual Zoom links. And as Jody stressed, the link, for example, the closing program is different from the link you use to get on this opening program. So please be aware. We have the ask, and again, that in far more detail than what I've covered this afternoon. We have some messaging guidelines, some ways to talk about this issue. We have explanations on how to take action for each of the 4 ways that I highlighted earlier. So a virtual visit, calling the office, speaking out on social media, and sending an action alert or an email. We have lobbying tips, very similar to what I just talked through. And then we have lawmaker contact info. So for every member of the House and Senate, we have their main office phone number and their Twitter handle. If you want to know other social media handles, I would recommend one of 2 things. Either you can Google it, which might end up being the fastest way, or if you go to the lawmaker's official website, it will have all of that information on there. And I noted that you should take action on any social media platform you want, but I will caution and say that lawmakers are probably most active on, let me rephrase that. I think in general, lawmakers are most active on Twitter and Facebook. But I do think there's an increased presence of lawmakers on Instagram too. So I will share that. So with that, I just want to remind everyone what's happening next. So starting at 1 p.m. at the Zoom link here, it's also in your toolkit. NCJW is having advocacy and actually bonus communication office hours. So hop on at 1 if you have further questions about the ask, how to take action, any social media challenges. Join us at 1 p.m. for that. Then from 2 to 3 is the social media blitz that I mentioned. You're welcome to speak out on social media at any time, but if you're not sure when to do it, join us then. Then at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we have another set of advocacy office hours. Let us know how it went or how it's going. We can talk about best practices or anything you've learned or any great intel that we should know about. Hop on, we'll be there. And then starting promptly at 4:30, we'll have our closing program. And again, please note that each of these has a unique Zoom link. So last but not least, thank you all for joining NCJW and AE5's #VoteSafe Digital Lobby Day. If you have any questions, join our office hours or email action@ncjw.org and we will do our best to get back to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can say thank you. You can actually see my face when I do it. And with that, I think we're running just a few minutes early, go figure. So I think with that, I will close out the program and send you all off to take action. Let's be inspired by the amazing speakers we've heard so far during our opening program, and best of luck. And for those of you who want to hop back on and ask some questions, I will see you at 1 p.m. Thank you so much.